All right. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. Welcome to This Week in Pop Culture, the show in which we bring you what has happened in the past said week in the world of pop culture, whether we're talking about film and TV, sports news, tech news, theater news, entertainment business, and the like. We try to bring you up to speed so that way you are not left in the wind. I, of course, am your host, Brandon Choi, co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And as always, I will not be alone in talking about the topics that we will be discussing on today's show from the past said week. And I know normally around this time, normally I will be introducing Spillman Trueheart, my fellow co-host. However, he will not be with us for this week's show. And we are lucky enough to have, a terrific sub, on tap for you guys to help us out, or say be with us to talk about today's topics this week. They've been on the show before, providing their expertise as an auto head of being well versed when it comes to automotives. However, little do you guys know, they are also well versed when it comes to sports as well as pop culture as well. So without further ado, I want to welcome back to the show Mr. Jason Edmonds. Let me see if I can get him on. See if we have you on here.
Hey,
Jay, what's going on, man?
hey, what's going on, man?
All right. So, Jay, we had a number of things that happened this past week, as I just mentioned. Of course, we're going to dive into the news surrounding the last and perhaps final, or I should say, the upcoming, perhaps final Fast and Furious film, as Vin Diesel this past week went on record of some of the things that we can expect about the upcoming film. So we will dive into that a little later in our show. And of course, we will also talk about some casting news surrounding the Street Fighter film, which is developing a lot of buzz, as we have been, talking about a lot of the casting news that has been happening with that film in the past, say, a couple of shows over the last few weeks. So we will dive into that as well, because we do have the interesting tidbit of who will likely be our villain in that film. But before we do that, we did have some other things that happened as well. We unfortunately had some passings that occurred this past week. We did have some, sports related things that happened in the world of the NBA regarding player movement, as well as a coach that was hired to be plugged into, one of those teams that we, know was seeking, a coach that had, a good deal of experience. So we will discuss that as well. And then last but not least, we do have some streaming news to talk about, which similarly, in the case of Fast and Furious, is a IP that is wrapping up its run with its last season, because they had just announced the wrap up of their shooting schedule. So without further ado, shall we dive in?
Let's do it.
All right, awesome. Now, I will remind folks that are watching now, or are not watching us live, that I will timestamp a lot of the stories that we will be talking about in today's show. So just be on the lookout for that, because I know sometimes you may want to be able to skip ahead to a lot of those said topics after the fact. So I just want to let you know that you do have that luxury to do after the show airs. So without further ado, as I said, I wanted to get into some of the unfortunate passings that we did have, as I said, this past said week. So let me bring that up for you now. We're going to start first with passing that we had on Wednesday, as actor Julian McMahon. Let me bring that up. Fortunately passed away this past Wednesday in Clearwater, Florida. The son of former Australian Prime Minister Billy McMahon, Julian would go on to have a storied career on the small as well as big screen, thanks largely to his starring roles in projects such as Nip Tuck, Charmed, FBI, Most Wanted, and of course the 2000, should I say, Fantastic Four movies. In an article from Deadline, it is reported that McMahon's cause of death can be attributed to losing his private battle to cancer. Julian died at the age of 56. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on the passing of McMahon, and what is perhaps in terms of his filmography of your favorite work of his?
Well, yeah, B. It's always unfortunate when someone passes, especially from a disease such as cancer. So my condolences to his family and loved ones. Um, and I do remember Nip Tuck back in the day used to come on FX, so I remember his role as the lead physician there, and it was an interesting show. It was glitz and glamour. I think it was set in Miami, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a great show. And obviously, he was Doctor Doom, and that's one of his more notable roles. He was Doctor Doom in the original Fantastic Four. Well, the 2005 Fantastic Four, because
Right.
there's another one that came before that, but we don't talk about that.
No, we don't.
Um, but yeah, I do remember his role in that. He was always a cool type of guy. He kind of played the cool, whether it be a villain or a hero. He was always like laid back and very chill. So, unfortunate to see him go at such a young age.
For sure, for sure. I guess for me, it will, the most memorable role of his for me will be Fantastic Four. I was never really a Charmed person, but I did watch Nip Tuck like you. But in thinking of the Fantastic Four films, however way you feel about the franchise as a whole, those two films, whether it's Fantastic Four or Rise of the Silver Surfer, you can't deny the fact that he brought a lot of charisma to that role, and when you're playing the role of Doctor Doom, there has to be an element of not only villainy in that character, but there has to be an element of charm too, because a lot of people love that character, and it's because of how charismatic that character is, despite the villainy that is involved, or the acts of villainy that he commits in the comics. So the fact that he brought that charisma and also has that presence, I feel like, as I said, however way you feel about the franchise itself, he undoubtedly, brought something to that role when he did that character. So, again, as you mentioned, condolences to his family. And yeah, unfortunate to be passing away, especially in a day and age now, in terms of like the technology and the medicine that we have these days, to be not passing away at in your 50s. But again, condolences. We're going to move on to, as I said, another unfortunate passing, and this happened on Thursday, and this is with Michael Madsen. And talking about Michael Madsen, he passed away, as I said, on Thursday morning, to be exact. He was found unresponsive by deputies responding to a 911 call at his Malibu home that morning. According to the Hollywood Reporter, the actor, who was most well known, of course, for his roles in the Species franchise and Reservoir Dogs, and many of Quentin Tarantino's films, such as Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, The Hateful Eight, or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, was pronounced dead at 8:25 a.m. on Thursday morning, with cardiac arrest being determined as his cause of death. Michael Madsen was 67. So, Jay, I have to ask you, what is your favorite work of Michael Madsen?
Well, yeah, again, condolences to his family. I was, I don't remember him in this movie, but apparently he was in Free Willy. I think that was
Yeah,
my
he
first.
was. He was. Yes, I was about to say that, but yeah.
Yeah, but my his most noteworthy the most noteworthy film to me of his was Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2. He was the lovable villain, and he just brought a certain type of gravitas to the role, and I just love that whole Kill Bill franchise. But yeah, Reservoir Dogs is up there, but I would have to say my favorite role was the Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 role.
Got you, got you. I mean, I would say for me, Kill Bill. I understand how that would be a favorite. I can't deny Reservoir Dogs, though. Just by the fact of that, of that scene where he's like doing the dance, that iconic scene. Uh, that's right up there for me. I would also say the Species franchise, because there was a level of wit that he brought to that character, that was like sarcastic wit that his character brought, and he had terrific lines that he was provided the opportunity to play. However way you feel about the franchise as a whole, he was only, I mean, there are four Species movies, folks. I don't know if a lot of folks are aware of that, but he was only in two of them. But and I know a lot of people don't care too much for the second one, but you can't deny the first one and the classic that it was. And yeah, I would say between those two, those would be my favorite works of his. And you already took the words out of my mouth. Free Willy also. And I would say Free Willy just because it's such a departure from the type of roles that he played, where there still was a level of gruffness to his character in Free Willy, but it's such a departure in that if you look at his entire filmography, a lot of his filmography are like super violent, like ultra violent films, and you have this like one like family film amongst all of those. So I just find it fascinating of that dynamic of having clearly a niche that you have created for yourself, yet you have on this other end this film that is such a departure in terms of everything else that you've done, that is kind of fascinating, just the idea that you're even in that type of movie. So that's still up there. And then of course, I was the right age at that time too when that movie, I mean, we were both the right age at that time when that movie came out. So yeah, I would say among all his films, those three. And as I mentioned, he's been in a ton of Quentin Tarantino films. Kill Bill would be an honorable mention for me, but in that order, Reservoir Dogs, Species, and what is it? Free Willy would be
Yeah.
those for me. But what about you guys out there? I know we just talked about Julian McMahon and Michael Madsen. What out of between those two, what is your favorite? What are your favorite projects? Are they the same ones that Jay and I provided, or are they different? Maybe it's another deep cut that maybe I hadn't thought about. You can let us know in the comments. But we did have one other passing that happened this week, and that's with composer Mark Snow. So let me bring that up as well. So again, condolences for the family of Michael Madsen. But yes, Mark Snow passed away this past said week as well. More specifically, on Friday in his Connecticut home. It was confirmed by a representative who had confirmed it to the Hollywood Reporter. Born in 1946 as Mark Folterman, he later changed his last name to Snow as a professional moniker. He had a short stint as a record producer, but would break into composing in Hollywood thanks to his brother-in-law, George Stanford Brown, who convinced producer Aaron Spelling, the big producer Aaron Spelling of many shows, to take a chance on him by commissioning a score for ABC's The Rookies. After that, of course, the rest was history, as the 15-time Emmy nominee would go on to be recognized for his work on a number of projects in regards to his composing talents, whether it's Heart to Heart, TJ Hooker, The X-Files, Smallville, The Ghost Whisperer, and Blue Bloods. While a cause of death currently as it stands is not been provided, it's still being confirmed as this moment. Mark Snow did pass away at the age of 78. So Jay, what would you say in terms of his body of work as composer is your favorite from Snow?
I mean, again, condolences to his family. But I think I would have to say X Files, just
I
because
agree.
we
So
were a little,
iconic.
yeah, it's so iconic, and I think we were a little bit too young to be watching that show, but it didn't matter. That's back in the time where
Right. Right. Yeah.
Paris is kind of just like, oh, okay, it's fine. But yeah, X Files was great. Like I did that theme song, the songs from the show, all the music from the show is just phenomenal. Like you said, iconic. So, and then I guess an honorable mention for me would be, I guess, Smallville. I did watch that a lot, and it was a catchy theme as well. But X Files, top tier, 100%.
For sure, for sure. And I mean, I'm gonna have to agree with you a second you on that because when something is iconic when immediately there are just some scores out there that the moment that you hear the first couple of beats of that song, you immediately know what it is. I feel like Star Wars is that way. Jurassic Park is that way. And X Files in that same way. You hear that dun 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 dun, like it's something that's immediately recognizable with that project. Even if even for folks who may not even have watched the show religiously or is just familiar with the show, they even know the tune of the show because it's that iconic. It's just a part of pop culture at this point where it's so synonymous with a project. So again, as you mentioned, condolences to his family and friends. But yeah, I would definitely put what is it, X Files as the most iconic of his body of work. And as you said, Smallville is there, but I mean, he is the person who did that theme for X Files. So I mean, you can't go wrong with that. So that's going to do it for what we have with Legacies Remembered, with our Legacies Remembered segment. What were your thoughts on those folks that we had that passed away? As I said, we had Julian McMahon, we had Michael Madsen, as well as Mark Snow. What let us know in the comments in either case for either of their works, which of their respective bodies of work that you enjoyed the most. But right now, we're going to move forward into sports. As I said, there have been some player movement as well as a hire in terms of coaches in the NBA. So we're going to get into that right now. So let me pull that up. We're going to begin first on Monday as Shams Sharani reported that D'Angelo Russell agreed to a 2-year, $13 million deal with the Dallas Mavericks, while Clint Capella agreed to a 3-year, $21.5 million deal with the Houston Rockets. On Tuesday, Shams again reported that the Milwaukee Bucks would waive Damian Lillard, stretching the remaining $113 million on his contract in order to acquire Miles Turner, while Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, aka SGA, re-upped with the Thunder, signing the richest annual salary for a player in NBA history with a 4-year, $285 million deal. On Wednesday, Shams revealed that the Lakers secured DeAndre Ayton for a 2-year deal with a player option in his second year, with a 2-year total figure being revealed shortly after by Jake Fisher to be 16.6 mil. Not to be outdone, Shams Charania dropped another story on Wednesday while appearing on the Pat McAfee show that Mike Brown would be taking on the head coaching position with the New York Knicks. So out of these, with all the player movement as well as with the coaching hire, Jay, I ask you, of these stories, you can start with either. What are your thoughts?
Well, you forgot to mention one. The Wizards, we getting Cam Whitmore from the
Yes,
Rockets.
recently. Yes,
Yes.
recent. Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed.
No. I think that's they playing bound. They're playing bound no matter what. But it'll give the young boy an opportunity to kind of show his talent in an
Yeah,
environment that's not top heavy like the Rockets. But it seems like all the teams in Texas are just going to be exponentially better next year.
yeah,
Oklahoma City Thunder, they squeaked by the skin of their teeth to win that championship this year. I'm so happy for SGA. He won all the awards you can win this year, I think, except for Defensive Player of the Year. But everything else, and maybe did they win the play-in tournament? I'm not sure. I don't think they won that.
I don't
But
believe so. No.
yeah, so other than those two, he's basically run the gamut for everything. So happy for him. Richest contract in all the sports, U.S. sports right now. So that's phenomenal. Uh, the Mavericks went from basically about to burn the GM in effigy, and now he's gotten a wealth of riches. I mean, when Kyrie gets back, they have the #1 draft pick, and now they have D'Angelo to kind of hold them over while Kyrie is down. That's a
Yeah.
solid pickup for $12 million. That's basically a steal.
And a
So,
player of his caliber for sure. Yeah.
oh my gosh, he's a true point guard. So they're going to do really well this year, hopefully, with Cooper Flag and hopefully Street Close. I'm sorry. I forget his
Y'all
name, but
know. Y'all know. Y'all
yeah,
know.
yeah. Well, I hope he can stay on the floor, but if he
Yes.
can,
Agreed.
Anthony Davis, and Kyrie and Cooper Flag and the two 7-footers they have down there, those guys are going to be a tough challenge for anyone they come up against. And then again, the Rockets, KD. I'm and now they have a
Yeah, Clint
guy,
Capella. I mean,
Clint
they,
Capella. Yeah. So now they have a guy that can actually get the ball and take over. That's the one thing they were missing, and they have that in KD while maintaining essentially their core. And they have basically Joker Jr. over there, Sangoon. He's a phenomenal big. Um, Fred Van Vliet, always clutch. So they got great defense, great coach. They're going to be hard as well. They were #2 in the West this year, right behind OKC. And then they filled in that alpha score that they need. They got rid of the kid Jalen, but I think they'll do well. It's like I love the parity in the NBA right now. Let me just stop there. It's just phenomenal because for like a decade we pretty much figured it was going to be whatever team LeBron's on and the Warriors for the longest, and it was kind of like it was fun to watch. I loved watching the Warriors style of basketball. It's so entertaining, but it was anticlimactic. So I like to see that there's a new champion every year. I like to see all the moves these teams are making. I like to see that this second apron hard cap is mixing things up and is proven useful. And these guys are getting ridiculous contracts. I wish I was born, a
right.
little 10 years later and had some
Right.
eligibility because with the NIL deals that they have and these massive contracts that they're receiving, it's kind of crazy. So, I mean, more power to him, man. Like, I can't wait to see what happens next. I think you mentioned, I'm just concerned with all the injuries, what the state of the NBA will be with a lot of their marquee names being down right now. So, I'm just curious to
Yeah,
see what's going to happen. What about you?
for sure. I mean, I guess to continue on from what you're saying is that I do definitely feel that there is a need to reevaluate the length of the NBA season. You and I can remember a time where every single round wasn't 7 games. That was something that happened in our lifetime where they decided to make every single round 7 games, and I don't feel like that's necessary. I feel like if you just have maybe the conference final and the finals at 7 games, okay, fine. But I feel like you've probably already determined who the better team is within 5 games in the first and second rounds. It's not necessary to make the semifinals, the conference semifinals, and that initial round 7 games. It's not
Mm,
necessary at all. When a team is clearly better, they are clearly better. And I don't think that needs to be stretched out further. I feel like that's going to help limit a lot of the injuries that we're seeing. But I think it's also attributed to the way the NBA is played now, where there's a lot of a larger focus in terms of shots prioritized that are at the 3 point line versus, mid range or at the basket. And because of that, we're seeing a lot more of those injuries that we're seeing. Because if you think about it, we both play basketball, of you having to get out there to those wings to disrupt those shots of people, of players that are shooting. There's a higher likelihood that we're going to see a lot of those types of injuries where whether it's from the defender who's trying to get out there in time, or whether it's the offense of a player that is trying to, blow by that player because, they are, playing, coming out there to help, there on defense. I feel like it's a combination not only of the amount of games that are playing, but also in terms of the focus that we have of the 3 point line, where the game is a lot wider now. It's not as condensed and it's not as tight, but players are spread out further, so there's a higher likelihood of someone, since we're playing further out, of having to make up that distance, whether you're on offense or defense. Um, but in talking about the player movement, uh, as you said, I do like Russell as a short-term fix with Irving being out. However, I would say long term, I don't know how I feel about it, because he has demonstrated a tendency to not be very consistent. Right now, as a band aid, I feel like it will work as a short term fix, but I don't know how that's going to look as a long term fix. Once we have Irving back, you know, will he be fine coming off the bench, or will there be an expectation, as he has been, likely on the starting team while Irving is out, where he's not going to want to relinquish that role of being in the starting lineup, and how is that going to affect the makeup of the team, and how they run? I do like Capella with the Houston Rockets. His presence will give that team a lot more size and a lot more versatility. It gives them a presence down at the basket in terms of defense. So I do like that. Um, in terms of Dame Lillard, uh, it leaves the Bucks in an interesting place. While on one hand, I do understand the need to kind of get rid of that contract, because you have a player who you've promised a lot of money to, but at the same time, they I'm not going to say that he's not in his prime, but he is older, and as an older player, there's going to be a higher likelihood of him sustaining the types of injuries that you're seeing. So I understand the need to try to um, uh, move yourself away from that contract, but you can't deny the fact that Lillard is a franchise point guard, and now that you are waiving him, who do you now have running your offense? I mean, yes, you still have a Greek Freak, and you now have you have someone else down low, as well in the front court with brain farting, or with the Pacers, who I just named, that they just picked up for the Miles Turner.
Miles
So
Turner.
by having Miles Turner, yes, it gives you someone else in the front court, but you're how does the saying go? You're cutting your nose to spite your face. Where,
Right.
like, yeah, you're helping yourself on one end, but you're now depleting yourself on another end. And going into the season, who are you going to have now to be able to comfortably place in that spot? At least with the Dallas Mavericks, they have someone who can kind of hold the fort until then. In the Bucks, I mean, unless something changes in the very near future, they're going to be hurting when it comes to their guard position, their guard play.
Well,
Um,
Chris Paul is available, so they might pick up a veteran guard and Chris Paul. Even though they don't want to get older, he can hold the fort down. That's if someone else doesn't pick him up. But Chris Paul is an available point
exactly,
guard. I
he
think
is.
I don't think Russell Westbrook would fit their style of play, but he's available as well. Um,
But I'm saying Chris Paul is an even shorter term fix than Lillard. So, like, do you honestly see him lasting an entire season? And I mean, it will. I don't see him lasting an entire season. So, unlike who you would have with Russell, who is young enough where they I feel like he would have the durability to do so. I don't know if Chris Paul would do that, and now you're also lugging around that amount of money that you're paying him. That now, if he goes down after maybe a month. I don't want to give him that few period, that short period of time, but I feel we can honestly say that is possible. That he's only playing active with you for a month, and now you're stuck with the contract of what you paid for
Yeah.
having that short term fix. So I don't know. If we're talking about the coaching situation with Brown, I do like that pick. However, I will say that I'm still a little disappointed that it wasn't someone with more of a name. And it's no slight against Mike Brown. I mean, he has a lot of experience. He's won championships, but honestly, I felt like Mike Malone would have been a better fit with the Knicks. In terms of the way that the Knicks play, I feel like that would have been an easier transition because he is decent, just like their prior coach. He is defensive minded as well. Um, and he has that type of tenacity that is kind of like a moniker of currently the makeup of the New York Knicks. So I feel like that would fit perfectly with that team. I don't know if the more balanced approach that Brown seems to have is going to mesh with that team and allow them to maximize on what they're capable of doing. Because I feel like Mike Malone will hold players accountable, and I'm not sure if Mike Brown would do that in the same with the same tenacity. Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there are pros and cons to both. I think Malone has a more abrasive way of coaching, and Mike Brown has a more player style. He gives the players more autonomy, or at least more of a voice.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Malone doesn't, but what I heard from him in Denver is that he will cuss a player out and do all the things and say all the things to get him motivated. And not all the players respond well to that. And I think these players in New York got rid of Thibodeau because they were
Of that
like
same reason. So it'd be
that
too
same
much like
reason.
the same. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And then they were running to the ground as well. Thibodeau didn't know how to use his bench as if they didn't exist. So the players were kind of like, they were tired, and we saw that. I mean, they went up against a better opponent. I mean, just the Indiana Pacers just deserved to win, but it was just also he didn't maximize the talent that he had available, given what Brunson is doing, given what Cat is capable of, and the supporting cast. Those guys should have performed a little bit better and clutch. So
Well, I was gonna say, let me say this though, and then you can disagree with me, or agree with me. I feel like with Malone, while he has maybe the same type of abrasiveness with the as a prior coach, I don't feel like he would have the he would limit the lineup as much as Thibodeau did, because I feel like if Thibodeau was a little more lenient with the way he did his lineup, as abrasive as he is, um, uh, uh, identified as being, I feel like that was really the straw that broke the camel's back, is the fact that he really ran his players in the ground. And I feel like with Malone, while he may be abrasive, he is open to the idea of utilizing his lineup. He may get in his players' faces, but he trusts his players enough where he goes deeper into his lineup than Thibodeau does. So I feel like, while I understand what you're saying, I feel like that would have been kind of like the distinguishing factor, where I feel like if there was a choice between one or the other of having someone that's abrasive or having someone who refuses to go deeper into their bench, the franchise, like the upper management as well as the players, I feel like they would have been willing to deal with a bit of the abrasiveness, as long as you had someone who was willing to not run their players into the ground. So I don't know. But I get what you're saying. It'll just be interesting to see how players play for Brown, because I feel like under Brown those players may get away with a little bit more, and there may be a tendency to be a little lazier and not be as tenacious as they have created an identity for themselves as a defensive-minded team, as we've seen in the past. I mean, you could talk about abrasiveness all you want, but and so having that experience of having coaches that have been abrasive, you may not always like them all the time, but they get results out of their players. Um, but you may feel differently.
I mean, it's championship or bust for the Knicks at this point. And
Yeah.
Mike Brown hasn't head coached a championship team. He was an assistant coach, but he wasn't a head coach. So, and I will say the East is all open now with the injury to Tatum and what's going on with the
Yes, it
Celtics,
is.
and then the Pacers with the injury to Halliburton, and with the Bucks being in flux, we don't know who their point guard is. They should be another contender, but they won't be. So the Knicks just catapult to that number one spot. So they can basically, unless Orlando steps in their way, they can basically cakewalk into the NBA Finals. Not to say it's going to be easy, but I'm saying the competition isn't going to be as fierce. Or the Hawks can step up. But it's kind of like this is an easier type of path. He's a safe bet. I would have picked Sam Cassell. I think he needs an opportunity to coach. I think there are a lot of other coaches that should have an opportunity to coach that haven't had that opportunity yet. And I don't. Yeah, it could be some relationship things in some of these organizations. We don't have all the insider knowledge, but they picked Mike Brown. They're gonna rock with Mike Brown. We're gonna see what happens with that. We all know no one from the East is gonna win the title next year. So it like does it really matter? I mean, like, does it really matter? They all trying to win the championship and they're not going to win. The West is too stacked. We talk about all the Texas teams being like
And that's just
monsters.
Texas. That's
Yeah,
just Texas, y'all.
it just Texas. Then you got OKC who are young and that just won the title and they have all their pieces and they're just going to keep getting better. And then you got the Lakers who just picked up DeAndre Ayton. So they got Luka and the agent LeBron with a solid core of AR-15 and the squad. They're gonna put up some numbers as well. They're not gonna be a playing team. They're gonna be in that top six as well. So say all that to say, oh, can't forget about uh what well I know this isn't on topic all the way, but what are the Warriors gonna do? I know that like they didn't make any notable trades or any type of moves or
They
anything.
didn't. They didn't. And then that is my team. So like I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they managed to do. I know there has been a lot of talk regarding, speaking of the waiver of Dame Lillard, that there's been talk of all the possible places that he could go. I know in one scenario they're saying it would be interesting for him to go with the Lakers, but I can't see that happening because Luka needs to have the ball in his hand, and I can't really buy Dame Lillard as a shooting guard because if he's not having a good game offensively, he's an issue defensively. He's a matchup problem defensively, where you have so many big guards that are huge, 6'5" and above. So that's a matchup problem of him playing on defense, and he's really more, in terms of his effectiveness as a player, he's more of an offensive threat than he is a defensive one. Um, and then I know that they brought up just the idea of him being paired with Steph Curry, but I would have felt great about that a couple of years ago. But now with him being older, I don't feel great about that because I'm looking at that as a possible situation that's kind of like a deja vu of what we had with the Bucks, where, the idea on paper sounds great, but if he's not very durable, then we're sitting now with paying him that money when he's now injured again, and now we can't go and get a player who can be active. And there's no slight against Dame Lillard. Dame Lillard's a terrific player, but it's the reality of how the nature of the game is right now, and with a player of his age, potentially getting injured again, which is demonstrated again and again is something that is a reality, whether you want to believe it or not. So I don't know. And speaking of Aiden, that is an interesting acquisition because while he is very talented, he's demonstrated in the past that there is issues with maturity and with attitude. So I'm curious to see how that will play with JJ Redick and with LeBron James and Luka Doncic. More so with JJ and with LeBron. I mean, I know with LeBron, that might be a more interesting relationship because he's shown in the past in other teams that he has played with where there have been players that are kind of mercurial in terms of their attitude and how they have been issues in prior teams they played for or even on current teams that they're on before he's gotten there, and he's demonstrated a way to kind of work with those players and have success. So maybe being paired with LeBron is what he needs in order to be able to really maximize on his potential. But that is definitely going to be interesting. The SGA of it all, it's no brainer. He was on the best team all season. He was the MVP pretty much, undoubtedly, the whole season. So it's a no brainer. He's in his prime years, coming off championship, being the Finals MVP. There's nothing else to be said, I feel like, on that. So that all of that makes sense of him being paid that amount of money. And just as you said, the scary thing with the Thunder is that though they won the championship this year, they in all likelihood are going to be way better in years to come in terms of pieces that they have, in terms of pieces that they've secured, and in terms of pieces that they have and moves that they can make based on lottery picks that they have in the coming years. So that's the crazy thing is that they won the championship, but there's not even the best version of this team that we'll probably get, which we'll probably get in the years to come, which is scary. But what do you guys think out there in terms of player movement, in terms of Brown being announced as the Knicks coach? Let us know in the comments your thoughts on that. We're going to move on to Stream and Chill, and talking about the news there. As I mentioned at the top, there is a little known project that is wrapping up, and it was announced this said week. So I'm gonna see if I can share the screen for you guys regarding that said announcement because it came from the show's showrunner. See if I can get this up here. Here we go. So this was, let me get this up now. Let me know if you guys can see it. Should be popping up now. And this is from Eric Kripke from the Boys, of course. He posted this on Tuesday. Of course, it is a picture from the set from the Boys of the Seven's main base of operations, and he had the following caption: "This is the last time I will ever be on set. It will be torn down soon. It's bittersweet, but my primary feeling is gratitude to the Boys family. I love you. To the fans, can't wait for you to see the grand finale. That's a wrap." And he also gave some credit to Karen Fukuhara, who of course is one of the stars of the film who took the picture. He has since also posted some additional pictures as well here with the cast that you can see here, that shows us with the Boys as well as with Homelander. So Jason, your thoughts on the announcement from the showrunner of the wrap up of the shooting for the fifth and final season of The Boys, Prime Video's The Boys, and are you excited for it to arrive?
Well, when the boys first aired, it was definitely a deviation from the norm in the superhero genre at the time. That type of like irreverence, that type of like visceral violence and like comedy and humor has not really been seen. So I loved the first couple seasons of The Boys. It was phenomenal, and to see it end is going to be bittersweet. I know all things come to an end, And having 5 seasons is great, and not letting it drag on and on and on would be also equally great. But yeah, I just think, I mean, I am excited, and I am looking forward to how they're gonna tie up all these loose threads, because they have that whole tie into the Generation V TV show as well, their spinoff. So see what they do with those characters is going to be interesting as well. And I'm just going to see how they wrap everything up, and if they stay close to the source material or if they deviate wildly. I'm also very curious to see if they do that. But
Sure.
again, like, it's great. It's an end of an era. Great television, one of the better shows on TV right now. Just hope they stay true to form of the first 2 seasons. They kind of deviated a little bit, but I just hope they end on a high note. We don't want a Game of Thrones situation here. So
No, we don't, and I'm glad you brought that up because when we're just talking about a lot of shows that are out there, we have shows that we've that have long runs, and when I say not necessarily long runs, but they've had relatively expansive runs. And when I say that, I'll say maybe like 5+ seasons. So minimum of 5 seasons and maybe, a few seasons beyond that. So I'm looking at you, Game of Thrones. I'm looking at you, Dexter, the original Dexter. Uh, and I mean, there have been other shows like that. And don't get me wrong, like Walking Dead 2, sorry. I got to put you on blast too. The original Walking Dead. I mean, there've been shows out there where they, for the first couple of seasons, they're terrific, and for whatever reason, um, call it, kind of creatively, maybe things get kind of stale, that it just doesn't wrap up. By the time we get to those last final seasons, it doesn't wrap up in a satisfying way. And hopefully, as you said, Jay, that they are able to manage that with this show. 5 seasons is a substantial amount of time, and I've seen shows drop the ball even in 5 seasons. So like, hopefully, with everything, all the momentum that they've had thus far in these seasons, and what's happened in the seasons, that they really give us something satisfying to wrap up the story. We do have other parts of the universe that's out there with Gen V. I believe there are a few other projects that might, from what I understand, that might potentially get off the ground post The Boys, that will still be in the world of The Boys, kind of like what they're doing with Walking Dead, where the original run is done, but they're still continuing onwards with certain characters. Which, if we're really being honest, are we really getting rid of the show if you're still continuing with certain characters and we're still in that world? But I digress. Hopefully, as you said, that it comes off in a satisfying way, because there's so many memorable moments, and just as you said, it's very much an era of so many crazy things that have happened on the show, and it would be a bummer when you look back and reflect on the show, instead of saying, man, those were 5 terrific seasons and it ended so awesomely. What you sometimes see with other shows when people talk about it, when they say, oh yeah, that show was great, just don't watch
right,
this season or this season. Like, don't watch the last 2 seasons and you're good. The series is good, but just try to bypass the last 2 seasons.
right, right.
Which is often the case with some of those shows that I just mentioned at the top. Even though I will say, I'll play devil's advocate and say that there are moments in each of those shows where you have your merits of things that are memorable or fun about those seasons, like certain moments. But as a whole, yeah, no. Which is why it's exciting, to, speaking of which, that, Dexter is continuing, because to Dexter's credit, that shows credit. The prequel, if you haven't seen it, Jay, for any of those of you who haven't seen it, Original Sin is actually really good and is like back to form for those who like the Dexter show, which gives me hope for the new show, Resurrection, especially with the crazy cast that they have in this in that upcoming sequel show, which, by the way, has one of our folks in our upcoming stories starring it. But what do you guys think out there? Are you guys excited about the fifth and final season of The Boys? You guys can let us know in the comments down below. Now we're going to get into our main topic story. I know we talked about it at the top. We have two things that we will be talking about. One of them being the return of a OG character in the Fast and Furious franchise, as well as the Street Fighter film, as you can see here, finding its villain. But I'm going to share a video with you guys, and this is surrounding a event that Vin Diesel appeared at this past week. See if I can get it up for you guys. Let me know if you guys can see it okay. See if we can get it up here.
It's the best time to save. It's the best time.
Guys. See if we can get this up. But while I do that, let me see. Hold on. Looks like it just froze on me. But what I'm bringing up now is Vin Diesel was in attendance with an event that was run by the brother of Paul Walker. And at the event that he made a surprise appearance at, he made the announcement of the upcoming Fast and Furious film. And if that weren't enough, he talked about some of the details that they are working on with that said film. So let's see if I can skip ahead here. If you guys give me one moment. I think we have it here. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to bring it back up. Let me know if you guys are able to see it.
This culture, our franchise, is only made possible because of the love that you all have for this culture called the car culture. I love you, man. So I just wanted to say, first, let me just say, I'm so proud of Tyrese and Cody for what they've been doing here at Fuel Fest. Give it up for them, please. Just yesterday, I was with Universal Studios. Does anyone know Universal Studios? Whoa! Are you about to make an announcement? Oh, what's about to happen? Something's about to happen. Make some noise, make some noise. The studio said to me, Vin, can we please have the finale of Fast and Furious, April 2027? I said under 3 conditions. Under 3 conditions. Because I've been listening to my fan base, I have been listening to all of you who have been asking for 3 things. The first is to bring the franchise back to LA. Y'all can do better than that. Fast and the Furious is coming back to LA. The second thing was to return to the car culture, to the street racing. Oh, this is good. You want to know what the third thing was? Does anybody want to know what the third thing was? The third thing. The third thing was reuniting Dom and Brian O'Connor.
All right, so and that's a clip that we have from, as I said, the event that was put on by late Paul Walker's brother. Apparently, is co-founded by him. Shout out to Hot Cars. That was their channel that they were able to capture that moment. Hold on, get this closed here. But yeah, they were able to capture that moment. So we have Fast and Furious, the new Fast and Furious, apparently coming in April of 2027. We also know that it's from what Vin Diesel had mentioned, that we're going back to LA, that we're getting back to cars and racing. And we're going to have apparently the return of Brian O'Connor, who has, yes, been in the franchise since the untimely passing of Paul Walker, but it has been in flashes, or in showing the back of the character, or in passing. Maybe you're hearing his voice over the phone, things like that. So you hear this, Jay, in terms of what was announced with the upcoming Fast and Furious, and what are your thoughts?
Well, first things first, Vin Diesel looking like an unk out here. He's looking with the vibe in full effect. My boy is eating healthy out there, man. And Fast and Furious is one of my favorite superhero franchises. That isn't
right. I'm glad you said superhero franchises.
Because them guys are just basically superheroes, the stuff they were doing. So I was glad to see they going to give up their powers and be normal humans again, and just do some racing. It's an entertaining franchise. I've watched every single movie because I'm a car guy. I love cars, so I'm glad they're gonna go back to the cars. And I doubt it'll stay wrapped up for very long. I think there will be some type of prequel. This is a money, this is a very money rich franchise. This franchise has generated billions, and for them to just all right, wrap it up, and we're gonna start something else. I just don't see that happening for very long. So yeah, he's saying that now, but I'm guessing in the next 5 or so years they'll have another movie.
Trust me, they'll end up going the way of like we were just talking about with Walking Dead or some of those other shows. They'll get rid of the original series and continue on with all these sideline franchises.
Right, exactly. They had a cartoon or a 3D generated TV series for kids that was out and that my son used to watch. And I'm sure they can pick up some of those characters and keep the whole franchise alive, because you know how Hollywood likes to run a franchise into the ground. So it's just not.
And they'll milk every component of that franchise that they've established. Oh, let's bring this character back from the animated series from 10 years ago that no one knows about, or everyone forgot about it, don't remember.
Exactly. So I take his words with a grain of salt. It'll be a nice popcorn movie. They weren't high cinema, any of them, so I know what to expect from the franchise. I don't have much else to say about Fast and Furious. I wonder if The Rock or Jason Statham will be in the film as well, given that this is the final movie in the series of these characters. Or I wonder what happened to the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff. Is that going to continue? Those are all different questions that I have. But nonetheless, it'll be entertaining. You're gonna go in there getting what you expect. Some normal people who have superpowers, and then yeah. So, what about you?
Man, I'll say this. Kudos to Vin for allowing this franchise to extend as long as it has. If anyone told me back in 2001 that we would be here 10 films into this franchise, I would not have believed anyone. But somehow he figured out a way to make it happen. You know, kudos that halfway into the franchise, they figured out a way to kind of refresh the franchise, but making it a heist franchise. Speaking again of, you know, the fact that you lovingly call it a superhero franchise, to think of how, you know, in the first film we started off as petty criminals and now we're like mercenaries and spies now, when there had been nothing established demonstrating that they had the capacity to be mercenaries and spies, but now here we are. I would not have believed it, but uh you know, I'm just looking forward to what craziness, you know, they're able to you know, put together. I mean, you can always expect the following. You can always expect prior villains becoming family. So I'm guessing, you know, Charlize Theron's going to end up being a member of their family now, because she ended up somewhat becoming a good guy, an anti-hero by the last film, because, you know, as she mentioned, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. She didn't say that specifically, but that's what she meant. And then always, of course, the presumed dead characters somehow getting retconned into surviving all the time. So I don't expect John Cena to be gone. I'm sorry if that's a spoiler, but the movie already came out. And I don't expect him to be dead. So it's not going to be an issue anyway when it's all said and done. And then, of course, the major set pieces that you always have in the third act. All the crazy things that they've done thus far. What are they going to do now in this presumed last film to top everything else? Which will also be interesting. But I will say, considering the cliffhanger that they left it off in the most recent film, are they just going to skip ahead like years later of what transpired in that moment, or are they going to pick up right from that moment? Because if you're now trying to pick up from that moment, you can't do that, because the kid that's going to be playing the son is going to be like a grown adult by that time. So like, what are you going to do? Are you just going to address it in, like, say something happened and now we're flash forwarding, you know, 4 or 5 years later? Like, is it going to be a time jump from that moment? I don't know. I do expect Jason Statham to come back. And I also, based off of what you were saying, Jay, I do expect The Rock to come back. It does seem like the Rock and Vin have kind of squashed whatever their issues were, you know, alleged issues were, that they beef that they had between them. And also, I feel like it doesn't hurt that at this point, at a time when The Rock was like opening, you know, $100 million, you know, blockbusters every single time he did a movie. That's not really the case anymore. So I feel like that also played a role into why he kind of, like, you know, squashed his beef with Vin. It's like, okay, you know, I'll hop back on this franchise because, you know, all these other ones that are going right now aren't really, you know, aren't really working. Um, uh, call it the cynic in me, because I know at that time he's kind of like, you know, flying on, you know, flying on all cylinders, where everything was like kind of like, you know, really working for him. And it feels like now that you have, you know, Black Adam and that dismantling of what happened over at DC, and then the last couple of films that have come out haven't, you know, opened the way that he wanted, that he's kind of being, you know, a little more reflective and saying, okay, let me squash this, because I don't want to burn this bridge and this opportunity of being a part of this franchise now that, you know, some of these other ones, you know, are not going the way that I was anticipating they would go. You may disagree with me.
He's still getting that Moana check.
He is. But you know what I mean, though.
Yeah, and he has a movie coming out this year called The Smashing Machine, and that's kind of like Oscar bait. It's an A22 movie. It's gonna be really, really good. I saw
I've seen that too. I've seen that too.
And then the way he embodied the role and the guy, the MMA guy. It's going to be a really good movie. He might get an Oscar nod for that. That'll catapult him into another echelon because he's just an action star. He's
Right.
been known as just an action star. That might take him
Right.
to another level. But yeah, I think it's all good. You're right, for your pocket's sake, and humility. Humility brings everything back down to equilibrium, and he's kind of like, yeah, might as well get a little bit more of that Fast X money, Fast and Furious money rather. So yeah,
And
Fast X
also, if I
money.
want to continue my own little sideline franchise, I may want to try to squash this beef so that way I can keep doing those Hobbs movies. Because the first Hobbs and Shaw movie did really well. So I feel like if they decided to do another film, they probably would make money. So
Yeah, they'll green like that. Yeah, yeah, they'll green like that. It's just that two alphas in the same movie, just thematically, it just didn't work. As far as like, there was no way that they play off one another, and they kind of rehashed their whole trajectory from the other movie when they were in the actual mainline films of the Fast and Furious franchise, and so they had squashed their beef, and then they reset the beef, so that was kind of confusing for me. But I mean, you got a film with Jason Statham and The Rock. No one cares about the plot. They just want to see them punch and shoot and blow up some stuff. So like, come on, like, I'm thinking too hard about an action movie. But anyway,
no, I
needless to
got you.
say, needless to say, I think The Rock's career is going to take a different trajectory after this Smashing Machine movie comes out, and I think from there he'll redefine his career and with the type of actor that he is. Akin to kind of like how Will Smith kind of became a more of a dramatic actor as opposed to just the summer popcorn Independence Day Men in Black type of
Men in
performance.
Black. It's a good
Yeah,
point. It's a good
yeah.
point.
So I'm thinking this might change his whole thing, but we'll see. And then Vin Diesel, he can sit back and get that belly nice and big, keep on eating as much as he can, because he's eating real good off the Fast and Furious franchise. And so I'm
For
curious to see
sure.
how they bring Paul Walker's character back. It's going to be like some type of facial thing that they did in the prior movie, or they just going to just recast
I
with
don't
his
know.
younger
And
brother.
honestly, I feel like it would just make more sense. And just to give a shout out to the shows, I kind of touched on it, but I wanted to make sure I give a shout out to what that show was. The show was Fuel Fest, which is co-founded by Cody Walker, which is a show that he puts on, and Vin Diesel did a surprise appearance there. But to your point of what you were talking about, I feel like it would make more sense of just having Cody Walker just be the character, because while I understand the need to have done it before because it was so close to Paul Walker's passing, you still didn't want to disconnect too far away from the character. I feel like enough time has passed that people would be okay with someone else taking on that role. And I mean, you can't get any closer than the very person who is related to that said person. So I feel like just having Cody Walker, and he looks enough like Paul Walker,
Right.
where I feel like that would be okay just to have him. Because I feel like if you do special effects, it's just going to be too distracting. Because even in Fast and Furious 7, while I understand, like I said, while I understand the need to do it at that time, because you still want to have it connect. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little distracting. As good as the effects were, you could still in moments kind of tell when they were using those moments, because there were some things that they had finished before he had passed away, so they didn't have to hop in there and change it. But there were moments after the fact, because I believe that they were maybe halfway into production at that point. So there were a lot of things that he had already finished before his passing, and then there were things afterwards that they had to utilize Cody to be able to use as a basis, and then to put the special effects over it. But yeah, I mean, that's my thought. I feel like they should just bypass doing the special effects and just have him be that character. And I feel like it still would be a testament, and it still would be a what's the word? It would still be something that would be in remembrance of Paul Walker by having his brother play his role to finish his role. Like, I don't feel like people would feel any type of way about that. I feel like it would still be, accepted. But
Right.
that's just
Right.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
But that was not the only story that we had with our film and TV talk. As you saw in the background, outside of what we had going on with the Fast and Furious franchise, we also had some news in the way of the Street Fighter movie. And this was in a story revealed on Tuesday by Deadline that actor David Dastmalchian would be playing the role of the villainous M. Bison in the film adaptation of the Street Fighter game series. Perhaps best known for his roles in The Dark Knight, the Ant-Man film series, as well as the leading role in the streaming horror flick Late with the Devil. Dastmalchian will soon be seen also in the highly anticipated sequel series Dexter Resurrection. While details are still being kept under wraps regarding the film's plot, it's not known how Bison will factor into the plot. However, those familiar with the game series know that the character is a central villain among many of the games as the leader of the criminal organization known as Shadowlo and is hell-bent on world domination. Also, what is known is that Dastmalchian will be joining an already insane cast that we've already discussed on this show on prior This Week in Pop Culture episodes, which include Andrew Koji as Ryu, Noah Centineo as Ken, Jason Momoa as Blanca, Roman Reigns as Akuma, Orville Peck as Vega, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson as Balrog, and Andrew Schultz as Dan. Jay, your thoughts on who we have as M. Bison?
Is he going to bulk up? I mean, David Dastmalchian is kind of like a smaller guy, and all these other guys are like very imposing figures. So I wonder how they're going to portray his physicality in this film. But I feel like the other cast selections, I feel like it's a solid cast selection. He's a darker type of actor. He usually plays a villain in most of the shows that I've seen or the work that I've seen him in. So I'm just interested to see how they're going to portray his, because Bison is like a really really imposing figure in the game, and it's just kind of like this guy.
I'm glad you brought that up. I can attest to this because I have met Dastmalchian in real life. It doesn't seem that way when you see him in movies. He's not a short guy. He's like 6'4". He's tall. He's a tall guy. So while I do understand the skepticism about maybe him bulking up, I mean, I do feel like he could do that. He is not a short person by any means. So like a lot of times when you're watching him on screen, it doesn't really do justice to how tall he actually is. He's not a short person at all. He's pretty tall. So with that being said, for that very reason, I feel like, and I'm surprised I didn't even like consider it, because when they were throwing around a lot of these names of people that were involved, and before they started making confirmations, I was saying that maybe, Jason Momoa would make, a good M. Bison. But I know like they have been throwing around a couple of other names as possibilities. And I know David Dastmalchian wasn't the other person that was in the running. I'm brain farting on his name right now, but he was in the most recent season of White Lotus, who they had up for M. Bison. I'm gonna try to see if I can.
Walton Goggins? Is it Walton Goggins?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who they had up for as a possibility for M. Bison. But I mean, I'm surprised I didn't think of, like I said, David Dastmalchian from the jump, because he's also a terrific, actor. As you said, he's played a lot of roles where he's very good at playing disturbed, dark characters. And I feel like that element of of energy that you can bring to a role is necessary for M. Bison. Add to the fact that, you know, as I said, he's not a short person. I feel like he will also bring a sense of presence to that character. So, you know, I'm pretty optimistic when it comes to the possibility of him taking on that role. So we'll definitely see. But maybe you guys out there feel differently. Maybe you feel like Goggins would have been a better M. Bison. I mean, Goggins would have been a decent M. Bison, but maybe you guys have some other options out there. You guys can let me know in the comments what are some other options for M. Bison that you guys think were cool. But I think David Desmouchin is a pretty inspired choice. And if we end up having a franchise, I feel like he is someone who could carry on with that character for a couple of years. Even though he does have some big shoes to fill, I'm not going to lie. You know, with you know, say what you will about the actual film, but he is iconic in that role. The late Raul Julia as M. Bison in the Jean-Claude Van Damme Street Fighter iteration. As I said, say what you want about the film, but he is extremely entertaining in that film. And he's very iconic in that role. So we shall see. But that is going to do it for this week in pop culture. I want to thank you guys so much for hopping on and watching. As I said, if you're watching after the fact, after this live airing, you also can skip forward to a lot of our stories that we have. I'm going to punt it over to you, Jay. Can you tell folks where they can find you?
Thanks, B. Yeah, Jason at J Squared Fitness on Instagram. And it's a pleasure being here. Hope to see you guys soon.
All right, excellent. And once again, I'm Brandon Choi, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me at Brandon Choi ENT on X and Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. Be on the lookout because next week it will be the start of our episode breakdowns for the upcoming Dexter series, which will be premiering on Friday. I should say the show. The show premieres on Showtime on Friday, but we will be doing our episode breakdowns starting on Saturday. It will be every Saturday following each episode's run, and we will have a special guest every single week for each of those breakdowns. We'll be doing 2 episodes for this first upcoming episode, because as you well know, with a lot of these shows, they don't just premiere one episode, they premiere multiple episodes when they drop it. So it will be for the first 2 episodes starting on Saturday, and then 1 episode following that. And then I can also announce too right now that even in addition to the episode breakdowns that we will be doing for the Dexter show, which is titled Tonight's the Night, for those that know their Dexter lore, we will also be doing a episode breakdown for the upcoming Alien series as well, which I'm looking forward to, and that will be in August. So be on the lookout for that, and we have some awesome guests who will be joining us with that show as well, some of which are also Alien alums, Alien franchise alums. So it should also be interesting. So be on the lookout. But thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, guys, and see y'all soon. Peace.